Thanks to everybody for being here today. I feel really lucky to be joining you today for lots of reasons. But happy Sagadawa. I see Tom from Chicago has already jumped in with that. Yeah, today is Sagadawa, and it's a really great day to be doing anything connected to Dharma. So I'm super happy that we have this opportunity this evening to talk about the Dharma together. And this is the day that I guess you could say that it's the Tibetan Wesak. It's the day we celebrate the Buddha's life, his birth, his death, and his enlightenment all in one day. And over at my center, the center I'm connected with in Columbus, Ohio, we had prayers this morning, and we even had some Tibetan families join us. It was a really great occasion. And so anyway, it's a really, really good day to do prayer, to do meditation. So when we get done this evening, if you have extra time this evening, spend a couple extra minutes making aspirations, because it's said that because of the convergence of these episodes in the life of the Buddha and this astrological day, the aspects of the day are great for multiplying the benefits of our Dharma practice. So even if you can just do a few extra mantras today, that would be a wonderful thing. So let's see, Yunten, I think let's start with some prayers here, and then we'll get started. Speaking of saying prayers on Sagadawa. Okay, we'll start with the Mahamudra lineage supplication. O doje chan chen te lo narodang marpa mi la chu je kam po pa du sum she ja kun kien karma pa che shi chun je ju pa tsinanda drita tsao sum pa den tru pa sok sablam cha dia che lang ha nye pe nyam me dro gun da po ka du la so adep so ka du la manam Jupa no nam tar jin ji lo shen lo kon ki ka par sung pa shen se nor kun la cha shen he pa dang se dir tu ta chu pe kom chen la ne ku shen pa me par chin ji lo mu gu kom ki go war sum pa jen Ming a ter go je pe lama la jundu so wa de pe kom chen la chu mi mu gu ke war chin ji lo yang me kom ki ngu shir sum pa shen gang shar to pe ngo so ma de ma chu de ka cho pe kom chen la kom cha lo dang tra war chin ji lo nam tok ngo wo chu kur sum pa jim chi am ha yin chi yang char wa la Magaro parcha wegom chela Corde hier me to pargingilo Kewa kun tu yanda lamadang Drel me chu ki pa la long chu ching Sada lang ki yen ten rap so ne dorje chang gi ko pan yer to sho dorje chang gi ko pan yer to sho. And next we'll recite Taking Refuge and Engendering the Bodhisattva Motivation. This will be recited 3 times. O Sanje Chudan Sochi Chodnam La Jang Chu Pardu Dani Kyap Suchi Daji Jin Soji Pei Sunam Ki Drola Pinjir Sanjay Druparsho Sanjay Chudang Sochi Chonam La Jung Chu Pardu Dani Kyap Suchi Daji Jin Soji Pei Sunam Ki Drola Pinchir Sanjay Druparsho Sanjay Chudang Sochi Chonam La Jang Chu Pardu Dani Kyap Suchi Daji Jinso Jibe Sunam Ki Drola Pinchir Sanjay Druparsho. The 4 immeasurables are also recited 3 times. Semchen tamche dewa dan dewe gyutan tempar gyurchik dungal tan dungal gi gyutan trewar churchik Dungam hepe tewa tampa tam hindrawar churchik Nerin chantan yedan drawe tonyan chimpola nepar jurchik Semchen tamche tewa tang dewe gyutan tempar gyurchik Dungal tan dungal gi jutan trawar churchik Dungam hepe tewa tampa tang min trawar churchik Nerin chantan yedan drawe tonyan chempola nepar jurchik Semchen tamche tewa tan tewe gyutan tempar gyurchik Dungal tan dungal gi gyutan trawar churchik Dungam hepe tewa tampa tam min trawar churchik Nerin chantan yedan drawe tonyan chempola nepa jurchik Cha sawadang jujin shapadang Jesu yirang kurjin so yi Kewa chunze dagi chi sapa Tamche dagi chanchu chingo. Hey, thanks very much. That last prayer, the 7-branch prayer, I really like it because it's one of the prayers that Jamgon Khantrul calls on Lojong practitioners to do. In his commentary, The Great Path of Awakening, the commentary on the Lojong 59 mind training slogans of Chikawa Yeshe Dorje. He says it's a really good prayer to do morning and evening. And in fact, if you are using any one of the Lojong prayer books, the 7 branch prayer is given in that book because it's the main dedication that's used in the practice of Lojong. So in any case, I have a soft spot in my heart for it. And that 4-line one is really quick and you can do it anytime. So this evening, before we start, I want to introduce what we're going to be talking about tonight because we're slightly out of order because last week Kempo 10 was available, and so he helped us out by talking about point 5, how to tell whether the practice is working. And so we're going to be backtracking a little bit tonight by going back to point 4. But at first, I wanted to explain a little bit about how that came about. And so now we know what order we're going in. So now we're going to be covering point 4 today. Now, if I remember correctly, oh yes, fantastic. I do have sharing privileges. I feel so special. Yeah, okay, whoop, wrong one. Okay, let's find the right one. There it is. Okay, very good. So what I'm going to do is what I did the last time, which is to just talk a little bit about the Lojong practice in general for a couple of minutes, and then we'll move to the point that we're on today. Oh, and before I forget, I need to say a prayer at the beginning of my own. Sorry about that. Oh, pardon Sawe Lama Rinpoche, Tagi Chi War Pede Den Shula, Kadrin Jembo Gone Jason Te. Kusum tugging utrup sal du so. Okay, thank you. So to recap, like the practice of Mahamudra, Lojong is a complete system of training. And this system of training that is Lojong, that it results in Buddhahood. If you remember the story I told the last time I talked about this, I mentioned that Kempo Karthar Rinpoche encouraged me to teach Lojong to every person, every student, after they practice and learn refuge and so on. And after they take the refuge vow, and definitely before they start doing their Mahamudra Nundro practice, he encouraged me to teach them the 7-point mind training, because he said that would help to make all of the practice that they did afterward go well. So it was after I had been studying this book with people for a while that I discovered that, like Mahamudra, Lojong is a complete system. Kempo Karthar Rinpoche said it's a complete path to Buddhahood in one book. He said, you really don't need anything else, which is always encouraging, I must say. He has a lot of faith and confidence in this particular approach to Dharma. And he said that the 7-point mind training text by Jamgon Khantrul the Great, the one we are studying, is the best presentation of the 7-point mind training. So like Mahamudra, Lojong practice consists of preliminaries and a main practice. And the preliminaries are divided into 2 parts. The preliminaries for a session of practice, the Guru Yoga practice, is what's given. And those of you who remember, way back from point 1, and if you have Lama Tashi Dundup's Lojong prayer book, the Pecha book that he made up with the daily Lojong practice in it, it begins with Guru Yoga, and it includes the prayers from this book of soothing the pain of faith, as well as the short prayer, Guru Yoga prayer. I pray for your blessing, my Guru, great and completely worthy spiritual friend. I pray that you will cause love, compassion, and bodhicitta to arise in my mind. I am hoping that if you get the opportunity to do a daily practice of Lojong, that prayer will become second nature to you. And I'm hoping that some folks have already started praying it. So in any case, We start with a Guru Yoga practice every time we do Lojong in order to take the blessing from our Guru in the form of the Buddha Shakyamuni or in any other form. And we imagine that the Guru merges with us and blesses us to help us with our practice. And then he also introduced the general preliminaries, which are the 4 thoughts that turn the mind toward Dharma: the precious human birth, impermanence, karma, and the defects of samsara. So that's what's covered in the Lojong preliminaries. Then the Lojong main practice, remember the main practice in Mahamudra is Shamatha and Vipassana. Well, in Lojong, the main practice is meditating on ultimate bodhicitta and meditating on relative bodhicitta. The ultimate bodhicitta practice, as well as the relative bodhicitta practice, has both on the cushion and off the cushion components. So those of you who will have tried the meditation that Khenpo Urgyen Tenzin taught on how to meditate on mind, you learned about that particular practice. And then when you studied the Tonglen practice, you learned how to do that practice on the cushion. And then you also learned how to do that practice off the cushion by using the slogan, 3 objects, 3 poisons, and 3 seeds of virtue. So now we're moving on to the enhancement and correction section of the text, which are all of the remaining points, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So thank you for letting me kind of give you that bit of a recap so that you could see where we are in our practice of Lojong. We've already learned how to practice bodhicitta, both on the cushion and off the cushion. And we've also learned in point 3 how to turn adverse conditions into the path. And you remember the prayer that I shared when we talked about that in point 3, the prayer from Khenpo Tsultrim Gyamtso when he said, may all adverse conditions arise as friends along the path. May adverse conditions actually bring us benefit. May we realize emptiness, the complete transcendence of all. And coming to this realization, may we benefit sentient beings. So that kind of thought and that kind of wish is pervading the 3rd point, where we learn how to deal with the negative and adverse circumstances we have through relative bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta, and special practices. So that brings us to point 4, which is about, which concerns expanding our practice throughout our whole life. In other words, we've learned how to do the practice on our seat, and we've learned how to do the practice while we're walking around in everyday life. But how do we make the practice pervade our entire life? If it's going to be a good practice and it's going to lead us to Buddhahood, we're going to need to have it on speed dial. We're going to need to have our Lojong practice on speed dial throughout the day, throughout the night, and all through the year and all through our lifetime. So how do we do that, right? Back in point 5, we covered ways to measure the success of our practice. And now we're on point 4, where we build on what we've learned in the first 3 points. So the question is, for point 4 is, how does a Lojong practitioner live their life? What should our life be like? What should the life of a Lojong practitioner be like? Well, if we're practicing relative bodhicitta, that means we learn how to take care of ourselves and benefit others. And if we're practicing ultimate bodhicitta, we're trying to understand the nature of reality, the nature of everything, the nature of mind and the nature of reality. And so that's what we're trying to do in point 4. So point 4 teaches us 5 strategies. 5 strategies. That are called the 5 forces that help us to expand the practice throughout our entire life, and even unto the time of death. These 5 strategies will actually help you in Mahamudra practice too. You can apply these same strategies to your Mahamudra practice. and you can apply these same strategies to your mantra practice. But for now, we're going to be talking about how to apply them to our Lojong practice. So we're going to start with slogan number 17. A summary of the essential instructions: train in the 5 forces. In Jamgon Khantrul's book, he talks about what this means. He says he said the 5 forces summarize crucial points of practice and, in a single phrase, contain numerous profound key instructions for the practice of the Holy Dharma. And so the first is called the force of impetus. Really, impetus is a fancy word that doesn't get used much anymore, but it means to give ourselves an initial push, to give ourselves a strong, in fact, I'm going to say a strong initial push into our practice. And what he says to do is that you should be thinking from now until enlightenment, and at least from now until I die, and definitely from today into tomorrow, the 2 aspects of bodhicitta will never be absent from my mind. And so basically what he's saying is we have to make bodhicitta our priority. Bodhicitta practice our priority. So we have to say, yes, I'm definitely going to do this. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said this actually is helpful even when you're doing an individual session of practice. He said, sometimes when we sit down to practice our meditation or we sit down to practice our mantra, he said, sometimes we sit down on our seat and we just continuously think about everything that's been happening for us that day. He said, we like bring work with us onto our cushion. And what we really need to do is give ourselves a push away from our everyday life and into our practice. And so he said, when you start meditating or doing mantra, he said, you should, as you sit down and arrange your body in the posture, he said, you should be just quiet for a moment and think, for the next few minutes, I'm going to be training my mind. And I'm going to be using the practice of fill in the blank. And then I'm going to do that for the next few minutes. He said, what this does is it allows you to set aside your other concerns and to take hold of the main event, so to speak, the main thing we're trying to do, which is our practice. He said, otherwise, he said, the minute that your phone rings, you're going to want to jump and answer it. So in any case, this is something helpful. His Eminence Tai Sita Rinpoche was talking to a group of us once, and he said, you should look at your practice as being like, he didn't use the word me time, but he said it's something, that you should use your practice as a way to work with your own mind. And so I thought that was kind of a good thing to begin with too. He says, in fact, he said, you should tell yourself, I don't have anything else to do right now. He said, and tell yourself, I have all the time in the world to practice. So I love those 2 bits of advice. He said, otherwise, you'll be sitting on your cushion, supposedly meditating, but you're thinking about what you're going to do next. So he said, try to give yourself a space to actually do your practice. So this force of impetus is a way of giving ourselves a strong initial push. But it doesn't stop there. The force of familiarization, he says, Jamgon Khantrul says, no matter what we are doing, he says, maintain mindfulness and alertness. Those are the 2 skills we get from practicing shamatha meditation. When we're doing shamatha, we maintain mindfulness that we are doing meditation, and we maintain alertness to notice when we are not staying with our object of meditation. And when we are not staying with our object of meditation, our alertness alerts us to us being distracted, and then we can gently usher our attention back to the breath for a fresh start. So the same thing can happen when you're off the cushion. No matter what we are doing, maintain mindfulness and alertness and try to remember the two kinds of bodhicitta. I asked Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche once, oh, does this mean I should think about bodhicitta and benefiting beings when I'm doing the dishes? And he said, absolutely. It will turn your dish duty into bodhicitta practice. And I'm like, wow, is it really that simple? But it seems that it is. We should be practicing relative bodhicitta, caring for ourselves and others, remembering to offer our good feelings and experiences to all sentient beings. You know, when we have a pleasant experience, we think, may all beings have a pleasant experience like this. And when we have an unpleasant experience, thinking, I take on the unpleasant experiences of other beings. In other words, we we could try to remember to work with and offer our good feelings and experiences. We can watch out for Shenpa or ego fixation to pop up so that we can use our remedies. Now, if you remember from one of the earlier classes, we were talking about that word, Shenpa, which is a Tibetan word that Pema Chodron translates as being hooked. It's that feeling we get when somebody confronts us in a way that sort of incites our ego clinging. Like somebody calls us a name or insinuates that we're not very smart, or they go to steal our donut off the plate. You know, we get this complex feeling of being hooked, like, oh, I don't want that to happen, or ooh, I really want that to happen. So we have to notice, and as we get more attuned through meditation, through shamatha meditation and Tonglen meditation, we get more attuned to our thought processes. We'll actually be more readily aware of those moments of Shenpa when they hit. We'll feel a tension somewhere in our body. Maybe it'll be in our shoulders, our neck, our jaw, our chest. We'll start to feel tense, and that tension alerts us to know that we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to what we're thinking and feeling. And if we recognize that our Shenpa, we're being hooked and our ego fixation is popping up, we can use the three objects slogan when we're feeling these emotions and difficulties. Remember the three objects, three poisons, three seeds of virtue slogan? That's the one where he encourages you to notice your mental states, your mental afflictions as they pop up, and then to use them as a way of practice by using the formula that Jamgon Khantrul gives in the book, where he says, may every bit of every sentient being's mental affliction be contained in this mental affliction of mine. May all sentient beings have the seed of virtue of being free from mental affliction. May this affliction of mine contain all their disturbing emotions, and until they attain Buddhahood, may they be free of such disturbing emotions. And in this way, even our mental afflictions can become a means for practice. We also could use the force of familiarization to practice ultimate bodhicitta. We can look for opportunities to remember the dreamlike nature of phenomena. Maybe you're watching a movie, or maybe you're watching television. Maybe you're playing a video game, and you can take a moment to step back from the story you've engaged with and look at your mind and see how your mind is experiencing this input, whether it's a movie or a story or a sporting event, and so on. So we can challenge ourselves to look at our mind and see its nature, even in these types of activities. I think when I was talking about this last time, I mentioned the book about Dzongzar Kensei Rinpoche, Words of My Perfect Teacher, where he takes his students to the soccer stadium and they sit and look at their minds while watching the soccer game. It's pretty cool. So, but that's not all we should do. We should then practice the third of the 5 forces, which is virtuous seeds. Virtuous seeds means that we should take advantage of opportunities to make offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and engage in any other type of virtuous activity we want, such as benefiting other beings, trying to lift the spirits of people who are downhearted. You would not believe what the kind of response my husband and I got the other day when we went to the doctor's office. We went to the doctor's office and we tried to be nice to everybody. We tried to be nice to the clerk who was taking the information. We tried to be nice to the nurse. And then we saw another nurse and she said, "Oh, I saw you guys on the list today. I'm glad you're here. We need you today." Because we just try to be the people that don't give you a problem. That's our job. And we had just an amazing response. And I didn't realize that there are so many mean and angry people out there right now. So many mean and angry people. So there's lots of ways that you can practice virtue in so many tiny and large ways. You remember from our last conversation when I was here before, I mentioned that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche told us that when he was a boy in Tibet, he said, our family was poor. We didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't make really fancy offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but we could offer the beauty of the turquoise sky, the sparkles in the brook, the creek that went by, and we could offer the diamonds on the snow. He said we could offer beautiful flowers in springtime. And so he said we never lacked for something to offer to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So you can offer this whenever you experience the beauty and goodness. You can also make aspiration that others be free of suffering. We see so many people in need waiting on street corners asking for money. You can, even if you can't give them any money, you can at least make the silent wish that they be free of suffering. And so you can even wish to be of benefit to beings you encounter by chance, like at the doctor's office and so forth. You don't have to try to be nice to them if that's not your thing. But if you're shy, you don't have to do that. But what you can do is just sit in your chair in the waiting room and send goodness and love to everyone in the room. There are lots of ways you can build on this. And Jamgon Khantrul says, never be content with your efforts to practice virtue. And you remember Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, I quoted him at our last meeting, where he said, if all you can do is wish for the benefit of beings, that's powerful. That's incredibly powerful. He said it starts a momentum of goodness inside you that eventually becomes self-sustaining. And I believe that what he said is true. The fourth of the 5 forces, the fourth of our strategies, is the force of repudiation. And I love it. Jamgon Khantrul in the Great Path book offers a stellar example. Remember I told you at the beginning that mind training literature uses irony and exaggeration to make their points sometimes, but they also create this fictional character called ego clinging, and then they scold it. And so that's what happens next. He says, whenever ego-cherishing thoughts come up, abandon them completely by thinking like this. Previously, from time without beginning, you, ego fixation, have made me wander in samsara and experience different kind of suffering. In addition, all the suffering and evil that occur in this life are brought on by you. There is no happiness in your company, so I shall now do everything I can to subdue and destroy you. It's like, okay, that's interesting. but it's something we can do. It may feel really sort of false at first, it may seem kind of fake, but it's really interesting that by doing this, we are not going down the drain of blaming ourselves for something. It's not our doing. It is our tendency, our habit of ego fixation. That's really at fault. I'm trying my best, but ego fixation, you keep turning me around in the wrong direction. I think of all those Christian spirituals. Get behind me, Satan. Anyway, you get the picture. We have to try to take a positive approach even when things go wrong. So if we can then apply the fifth of the five powers, or the five forces, which is the force of aspiration. Dedicate, dedicate, dedicate. Dedicate the merit of what you're doing. Dedicate your life to Dharma. Dedicate, dedicate, dedicate. Always think about dedicating what you've done. This expands what we have done and really makes it incorruptible. I mean, it doesn't degrade. You remember in the Buddha's teachings the story about I think Kalu Rinpoche told this story where he said one instant of anger can wipe out a whole bunch of merit if it hasn't been dedicated. So dedicating the merit protects it from the degradation that comes from acting out our mental afflictions. And the other example that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche used to give was, he said, there's a difference between putting a drop of water in your hand and putting a drop of water in the ocean. He said, putting a drop of water in your hand, it'll evaporate very quickly. That's if you try to keep your merit to yourself. But if you dedicate the merit to all beings, it's like you have dropped that drop of water in the ocean. And it's not until that ocean dries up that you will lose that. So I thought that was a really wonderful comparison. So these are the five forces that help us to expand our practice, giving ourselves a strong push, familiarizing ourselves all day long with our Lojong practice, practicing virtuous seeds whenever we can, practicing repudiation and scolding ego clinging when it's necessary, and then practicing dedication and aspiration. See how we're doing on time. We're doing pretty well on time. So what I think I'll do is I'll reserve questions to the end. But if people do have questions, they can type them into chat as they think of them, and then I'll handle them at the end. So that's how to handle ourselves during life. But wait, there's more. Slogan number 18 tells us how to practice Lojong. What does a Lojong practitioner do at the time of their death? What's that like? Very few people. I can't remember which of my teachers told me this. I think it might have been Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. He said, death is something all of us do, but few of us plan for. It's death is something that everybody does, but very few people plan for. And he was trying to encourage us to plan ahead. So you get the picture. So that takes us to slogan number 18. The Mahayana instructions on how to die are the five forces. The older translation says how you act is important. In the new translation, he says your posture is important. And we'll get into that in a minute. But we'll start with these five forces. If you've read one of my favorite books on death and dying in the Tibetan tradition is Trongku Rinpoche's very slim volume called Journey of the Mind. And it's a really, really good compilation of very short, pithy teachings about death. In that book, he says the state of mind that we have at the moment of death is very powerful in determining our next experiences in samsara or beyond samsara. So how the environment we are in and what we think and do near the time of death is incredibly powerful to give us a push in one direction or another. Therefore, he said in the book, he said, it's important to surround ourselves with people who are positive, stable in their minds, and benevolent. He said, if you can surround yourself with this type of person, your death will be a completely different experience. It could become a transformative experience. And so, because of this, because the state of mind that we have at death is so powerful, Trungpa Rinpoche said it's very important that we have these peaceful people around us, and that the people around us try their best not to do things that make the dying person angry or upset. And so this is something we should all think about. And if you get a chance to read that book, Journey of the Mind, I recommend it. I also recommend Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's book, Bardo, Interval of Possibility, which is another compilation of great pieces of practical advice for how to approach the time of death. So there's a reason I'm telling you this, because I'm going to share an anecdote shortly about a person that I met and who wanted to learn the Buddhist way of dying. She said, she started the conversation by saying to me, I'm not a Buddhist and I don't plan to become a Buddhist, but I think you know something about dying and I want to know what that is. And I'll finish the story in a few minutes. But the reason I'm telling you Trungpa Rinpoche's advice is because that advice, as well as the advice in this book, were pivotal for her in her experience of, in her journey to the end of her life. So I just want to tell you that I have seen these principles at work in a real person's life. Okay, so now, so we need to plan now to meet the moment of death successfully so that our future life takes us closer to awakening. Now, those of you who know Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche know that he encouraged us to strongly make the aspiration to be reborn in Dewa Chen, the pure realm of Buddha Amitabha, if we had not accomplished the first bhumi of Bodhisattva awakening in this lifetime. He said, of course, there are many instructions on how to meditate at the time of death. And he said, and many people will try to do that. He said, but he said, unless you have already accomplished the first level, the first bodhisattva level of awakening in this lifetime, it might be very difficult for you to even practice meditation at the time of death. Whereas he said it's much easier and actually more powerful for you to aspire to be reborn in Dewa Chen, the pure realm of the Buddha Amitabha, where when you arise in that realm and look upon the face of the Buddha Amitabha and hear his words, you attain the first level of Bodhisattva awakening on the spot. So so he said, and besides that, he said, I'm going to Dewa Chen, he said, so I want you to go there and meet me there. So who can turn down such an invitation? So anyhow, I wanted to mention that. But so we need to plan now to meet the moment of our death successfully so that we get closer and closer and closer to Buddhahood. If we think of our Buddha nature as our most precious child, this metaphor has worked for a lot of people who really don't think much about taking care of their future life. They don't think too much about it. But if we think that we have Buddha nature and it needs nurturing like it is our most precious child, then We will be determined to care for our future self, just as we would a son or a daughter. Look at all of the trouble parents go through to make sure their children are clothed and fed and educated and healthy. Look at all of the planning that goes into the life of their child. Could we at least do the same for that future child we will be by planning and working with our Dharma during this lifetime? So that's my 30-second commercial as to why it's really good to plan before we arrive at the moment of death unprepared. So in Jamgon Kongtrul's text, the five forces are presented in a different order. First, he presents the force of virtuous seeds. And what he does with this, oops, I'm going to add something here. He says, he basically says, without, when you find out that you are terminally ill, he said, the way he puts it, he says, he says, oh, sorry, I did that wrong. He said, he says, virtuous seeds, give away all possessions without a trace of attachment, clinging, or concern. Oh boy, well, that's not something we can do here in America. But he said, first, the force of virtuous seeds means that when you know that you're dying, give away all possessions without a trace of attachment, clinging, or concern. In general, they can be given to one's gurus or to the three jewels. In particular, they can be given wherever the person thinks they will be most helpful. Again, that's not something we can do, but at least mentally, offer all your possessions to the three jewels. And that way you feel as though you have given them over, and you will still be surrounded by them, but at least you will have mentally prepared yourself to leave everything behind. This is really the value of this. And when I tell my anecdotes, you'll know why. The force of aspiration, he says, is to make enlightenment the single focus of aspiration. And that is important. You can say, you can practice the 7-branch prayer. See, he does like that prayer a lot. You can practice the 7-branch prayer if possible, or if not possible, by praying like this: through the power of whatever virtuous seeds I have gathered in the 3 times, may I never forget, but train and strengthen precious Bodhicitta in all my future experiences and existence. May I meet the pure gurus who reveal this teaching. I pray that these aspirations be realized through the blessing of my guru and the 3 jewels. So, in other words, we try our best to aim ourselves squarely toward awakening. The force of impetus is to think, I will never be without the 2 kinds of precious bodhicitta, not at death, not in the bardo, nor in any future existence. This reminds me of something that I missed in the earlier going. Remember when we were talking about the let's see, familiarization? It says in the book, it says that you can make the aspiration that you are never without bodhicitta, even when you are dreaming. Believe it or not, you can actually say before you go to sleep, you can say, wherever I'm going in my dreams tonight, may I benefit sentient beings. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said this is a good thing to do. He said, because he said the state of sleep is considered to be karmically neutral. Karmically neutral. So whatever you are thinking about before you go to sleep, flavors your sleep with either positive karma or negative karma. He said, for example, if you go to sleep thinking about a grudge, somebody you're angry at, then you're actually going to be accumulating negative karma as you sleep, as you try to think of your revenge fantasy. And whereas he said, if you think of positive and beneficial things as you go to sleep, then that carries through into your time of dreaming and sleep. So I had to make sure that I mentioned that. So that's also the force of impetus. The force of repudiation is a little bit different at the time of death, because it says the force of familiarization. Oh, I'm sorry. It says the force of repudiation is to think, this ego cherishing has led me to suffer for countless existences, and now I experience the suffering of dying. Ultimately, there is nothing that dies, since neither self nor mind have true existence. So I'll do whatever I must to destroy you, ego clinging, who constantly think in terms of, I'm ill, I'm dying. So you get to continue letting go of negativity. And then he says the force of familiarization, which is the last one, is to bring clearly to mind the two bodhicittas that have been practiced previously. So remember your practice of bodhicitta. So there is, and so repudiation is to reject ego fixation. Okay, so now that's how you can use the five forces at the time of death. But now we've also been told posture is important. Now, what does this mean? Jamgon Khantrul explains in the text that if a person who is dying can sit in the 7-point meditation posture, that's excellent. He said, but if they can't, they can lie on their right side, which was the posture that Shakyamuni Buddha took at the time of his death. Jamgon Khantrul goes on to say, you can rest your cheek on your right hand, blocking the right nostril. And then he said, you can breathe through the left nostril and practice. Now, relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. But some folks may wonder, well, what's going on with this? Why on the right side? And why blocking the right nostril? Why? We asked Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche this question, and he said, there's a subtle body as well as our physical body. We have a physical body, but we also have a subtle or energetic body. And he said that the breathing through the right side alone only it increases the confusion, the winds in the body that feed confusion and agitation. Whereas if we breathe through the left side, that side, the energy on that side is associated with calmness and wisdom. And so the idea is that it's lying on the right side and closing the right nostril suppresses agitation and increases the wisdom aspect of mind. So that's what that is about. Now, Jamgon Khantrul says that as a person is dying, it would be amazing if they could do Tonglen. And in fact, when we were in 3-year retreat, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was teaching us about death. And somebody asked him, well, how do you help a person who is not Buddhist? How do you help a person who's not Buddhist? How do you help them at the time of death? And he said, well, he said, you can do a guided meditation on Tonglen with them and encourage them to practice this Tonglen, breathing out and giving goodness, and breathing in and removing suffering, and breathing out and giving goodness, and breathing in and removing suffering. And he said, if they can't do that, then he said you can encourage them to make positive aspirations for the people they love. May my children be happy. May my friends be happy. May, and so forth and so on, and make positive. May they be healthy. May they have goodness. And he said at least that increases their positive state of mind. And Jamgon Khantrul says the same. He says, you should begin by meditating on love and compassion, and then train in sending and taking in conjunction with the coming and going of the breath. Then, without mentally clinging to anything, one should rest evenly in a state of knowing that birth and death, samsara and nirvana, and so on are all projections of mind, and that mind itself does not exist as anything. In this state, one should continue to breathe as well as one can. And then Jamgon Khantrul completes his presentation by saying, there are many highly regarded instructions on how to die, but none, it is said, is more wonderful than this one. So, in other words, Jamgon Khantrul is encouraging people to practice Tonglen at the time of death, the Lojong practitioner, to practice Tonglen, followed by ultimate bodhicitta meditation at the time of death, and to cycle through these two. So I thought that was a really beautiful thing. And Khenpo Rinpoche endorsed this as something that could be done. Then at the very end, it says, an instruction for death that employs a salve or ointment states, apply to the crown of the head an ointment compounded of wild honey, ash from burning unspoiled seashells, and filings from an iron magnet. Well, we asked Khenpo Rinpoche about this, and he said, yes, these things are difficult to obtain. And he said, this is why, he said, I've started giving people sand mixed with mustard seed that has been blessed in an Amitabha ritual. So any of you who have attended the KTD monastery Amitabha retreats, and especially the retreat that is just wound up today, that just finished up today at Karmi Ling, that sand mixed with mustard seeds is passed around, and the mantra practitioners are asked to blow on it, to invest it with Amitabha's mantra. And then Rinpoche packed these up into small packets and gave them to people so that they could apply this after death to the crown of the head of a person who had died. And so you don't have to worry about finding the ash from unspoiled seashells, wild honey, and filings from an iron magnet. You're covered. The idea is that this is a blessing for the person who has died, encouraging their consciousness to exit at the crown of the head, which is said to be the best place for the consciousness to leave the body. That we can do a whole unit on death and dying at some point in the future, and we get to share a lot of these helpful hints and tips. So that's a little bit about the fourth point, which is how to practice Lojong and expand it to fill your whole life, and how to practice Lojong at the time of death. Now, I told you I would tell you a story about a woman who came to me and said, I'm not Buddhist. I don't plan to become Buddhist, but I want to learn the Buddhist way of dying. And so I said, okay. And I got her a copy of Great Path of Awakening. I gave it to her, and I said, we're going to study this book together and see if this gives us some instruction on how to prepare for dying. Well, uh, she got the book and we were able to go through the important points. I taught her Tonglen, and then I taught her about the practices to do here in point 4 at the time of death. However, she was wealthy. We'll just put it this way. She was wealthy, and her sister had drawn up a bucket list for her. It was quite extensive, and said, "Oh, well, we're going to go here and we're going to go there." And she never had time to meditate. She never had time to meditate. She said, "I keep trying." She said, "But I'm too busy. I'm on the go." So, but as she began to weaken from her illness, she began to put into practice the 5 forces that were described in point 4. And she also, I also shared the Trungpa Rinpoche quotation about surrounding yourself with people who are peaceful and benevolent. And so she actually then constructed her situation around that advice. She called her the executor of her will and said, "Would you like to get started early?" And then she closed up her apartment in the downtown of the city she lived in, and the executor sold it. And she took advantage of that moment to give away everything that she did not want to keep in the apartment. She gave away everything, including a collection of art that she had won in a divorce. She gave all of her paintings away to her ex-husband, who had really wanted them. So she was really unburdening herself, and she really took to heart this idea of giving away as much as you could. Well, then she moved to the family home, which was in a rural area, and she lived out her life there. The remaining weeks of her life were lived there. And one by one, she invited all of her friends to come and see her at her family home, and she gave them gifts and dismissed them. Basically, she basically said, "I'm not feeling well. I'm not going to be feeling up to guests or visitors as I'm passing away. So I would like to say goodbye now while I have my wits and while I have the opportunity to say a proper goodbye to you and tell you how much I care for you." And so she did that. And she decided that 2 of her relatives would be her companions, and these 2 relatives stayed with her because they were able to stay with her until she died. And they said that she was very peaceful and carefree, and that she seemed to be very satisfied with having given away her possessions and so on. And in fact, I was one of the people she invited to come to see her, and she gave me a gift and dismissed me, saying, "I'm so happy I met you. I'm so glad we talked about Dharma and Buddhism and the way of dying. And thank you very much." And I got to say goodbye to her. And it was a marvelous experience. And when we compare and contrast that to another person I met, I was called, it's a completely different experience. I was called to a hospice in central Ohio to visit a woman who was dying. And she also wanted to talk to a Buddhist priest. So I went and met her, and she was having a hard time learning anything about Tonglen or anything about meditation because she was overwhelmed with concern about her cat. She said, "Oh, I went into the hospital suddenly, and like I don't know what I'm going to do with my cat. Somebody, I have to get somebody to take care of my cat. And now I'm dying, and oh my gosh, who's going to look out for my cat? And then oh my gosh, who's going to look out for my house? What's going to happen?" And so we encouraged her, the chaplain and I encouraged her to be in touch with her family. And she got in touch with her family, and the family took care of the cat. The cat got a new home, and her home was cared for and everything was all right. And it wasn't until after these things were secured in her mind that she could even think about practicing meditation or making positive aspirations for the people she loved. So this was two different experiences by two different people who were following this advice in different ways. So I'm hopeful that having covered point 4, that this gives you some ideas about how you can expand your Lojong practice to be useful now and at the time of death. I'm going to take a moment here to look at the chat and see if there's any questions that have accumulated. Oh, thank you, Yunten. Yunten put in the links to get those 2 books. Thank you so much. Lindsay has 2 questions. I have 2 questions. First, where can I obtain a copy of the prayer book you mentioned at the beginning of the class? Second is in regarding dedicating merit. My understanding of it is a little muddy. Could you elaborate on the definition of merit as it pertains to dedication? Yes. I think what I can do is answer the second question first. Well, no, I can answer the first question first. Lama Tashi Dunda has a Lojong prayer book, and I used to have it sitting right here, but I've put it away. And it's lovely. And but if you promise not to put it on social media, I have one too. I'll get in trouble if it's on social media or put online in any way, because it quotes extensively from a book, and I don't want to get in trouble for copyright things. And I'm putting this on tape so everybody knows that I'm concerned. But there is one on my website, and I will dig that up for you and see if I can put that on for you and if I can't do it tonight, if I can't find it quickly, then I will put it in the notes for tomorrow. In fact, it's going to be much easier if I just put it in the notes for tomorrow. So let me write myself a note about that. And then I have one that was made for an earlier class that I did on that. It's a Lojong prayer book. And everything's in English. And and it would be so good if we could get one in Tibetan. Lama Tashi's is in Tibetan, and that's really good. And I will also give you the web address for his website, and then maybe you can find the prayer book there. Okay, so I'll take care of that for you. Okay, now the second question is about a merit. Okay, here's the thing. A lot of people tell me that they have problems with the word merit because some of them say, well, it seems a little crass. It's like spiritual money or something. And I this one person told me, I've never been much for money. So this whole merit thing is a big turnoff for me. So I said, okay, well, let's approach it a different direction. Let's approach it from the point of view of cultivating a virtuous mind state. Cultivating a virtuous state of mind. Because we know how it feels when we are generous and kind and loving. It's like we feel expansive. We feel good. It's a wonderful thing. Our mind softens up. And we also know how it feels when we're being stingy and not wanting to share, right? We know how tight and awful that feels. And so really, you could look at merit as not something like spiritual money, but more like this nurturing of a positive state of mind. You're nurturing a positive state of mind. And this is really great because Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche actually sort of confirmed this for me when he said a lot of people asked him why their Mahamudra practice wasn't successful. And he said, I wondered, myself as to why people could practice Mahamudra meditation and find that they hit a dead end with it. And he said, and I began to wonder 2 things. He said, first, have they really practiced a lot, or is it just a little bit? And he said, but the second thing is, how much merit have they accumulated? How much virtue? He said, because a virtuous mind state is a state that can relax and expand, which is what you need to do, learn how to do when you're practicing Mahamudra. And so it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So nurturing a virtuous state of mind is maybe better than saying accumulating merit. Now, but that still doesn't address the question of dedication. Okay, dedication. And John McContrell in the book talks about later, because we're going to start covering some of his later slogans where he gets into this a little more. But he says, like, he said, if you want to know what like mistaken practice is, he said, mistaken practice is practice that clings to some kind of concrete reality. Like, I am practicing this generosity so I'll be wealthy in my future life. You know, he said that's mistaken practice. And so dedication is like the antidote for clinging to a concrete reality. So if you dedicate your virtue to all beings and make the aspiration that all beings share in this, there's that open givingness again. So the idea is that if you keep it for yourself, it's sometimes called tainted merit. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche talked about this when we were in retreat. He said, tainted merit is like a daylily. That flower that blooms one day and it dies the next because it has no go power. It just can't keep going. Whereas that if that dedicated merit is like the perennial that keeps returning and returning. So anyhow, so it's like that. I hope that I see you're good with that. Okay. She's good with that. All right. Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Tom. Hey, Tom. Wanted to ask about concern for future lives. Do we need to fixate on it during this one, or live with virtue, merit, and integrity and let that shape how our future lives turn out? Well, in here, in Great Path of Awakening, he actually says, make aspirations that you will meet. I forgot to read that part tonight. He said, in all of my future lives, may I never be separated from the masters who teach this. So yeah, it's better if, I think what we do is we have, in fact, the language you use here of fixating on it, it sounds a little bit like all or nothing thinking. I'm either going to be totally obsessed and fixated on it, or I'm just not going to care about it at all. There's a middle path, Tom. The middle path is caring about it a little bit and making aspirations a little bit, but not being obsessed. Does that make sense? It's kind of more balanced, it's a more balanced approach. And so I do think it's, I never used to think about this. And then Rinpoche really, he said, no, you got to start thinking about helping your future life. And in fact, as we start getting into point 6 and point 7 in this book, he talks about that. And he says, you really do need to start thinking about it. Now, not every day, not every minute of every day, because that would probably be like the person who is like accumulating merit so they'll become wealthy or beautiful or something. We're not trying to fixate on some kind of concrete reality. We're trying to do our best to think about what we're going to be and who we're going to be. Because you see, here's the thing, we haven't thought about it at all. I mean, if you're like me, I didn't think about it at all until like a certain point when I got older. Then I started thinking, I better start making plans. Because if you look at people like Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, think about that. Here is a man who accomplished so much in his life. And we felt like he was an example of what an awakened being would look like and how an awakened being would act. That's how we felt about him. But what is he doing? Is he like resting on his laurels? No. Every day he was busy accumulating merit. I mean, he was like blessing statues and filling statues and doing puja. When he would do a retreat, he would do puja in his room all day. So, he's not messing around. So the idea, and he would build stupas. He built stupas in Tibet. And these things help to expand the Dharma activity that we have when we become enlightened beings. Think about that. When we become enlightened beings, that store of merit will help us be more effective. I'm just saying. Just saying. It's like recently, well, actually last year, they gave the empowerments for people who want to make stupas. I'm never going to make a stupa, but I love them so much that I had to go and get the empowerments. Like maybe in my future life, after I get to Dewa Chen, maybe I'll figure out how to come back here and make some. I don't know. Maybe it's crazy talk, but I love the idea of doing that. Khenpo Urgyen Tenzin gave a wonderful teaching about knowledge and wisdom at Columbus KTC a number of years ago. And he said, you've got to have a zest for learning and a zest for practice, enthusiasm, right? For practice and learning. He said, you should think think about it to the extent that if you think I'm going to die tomorrow, still learn something today. And this was held out by something, or this holds up because His Eminence Tai Situ Rinpoche said to us one time, he says, I've got some good news for you. He said, you get to keep everything you learned in this lifetime. You're not going to lose it. You get to keep it all. So that when you start in a future life, you will start from there. How many of us said, oh man, I wish I'd gotten involved in Dharma earlier in my life, right? How many of us, right, have wished like that? Yeah. And so, but hey, now we have the opportunity to front load that idea. Let's start working on that now. Anyway, Tom, I hope that helped. Let's see. And also accumulating mantras and so forth. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Accumulating mantras. Should we? I'm not sure I understand about accumulating mantras. Tom, you may have to clarify that one for me, would you? You can either type it. Well, we'll watch for you there. Okay, let's see. Did I miss any questions? Oh gosh, and we're 25 minutes.
That's all of them.
Wow. Well, amazing. Hey, Tom, if you want to, you can send me an email on that. Okay, and I'll try.
Or you can, or I said it so we can unmute.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it says keeping up our mantra practice and dedication of merit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, good. That's what I was just saying. Just in a sense, we do our mantras, just dedicate that merit for all sentient beings and so forth, so we don't, I guess, hoard it for ourselves, things of that nature. Because as you mentioned before, it can be very egotistical in a way if it's not done right.
Well said. That I really appreciate what you had to say about that because it's the same thing is true of like our formal practice, our informal practice. It's all the same, right? That it's really good to dedicate it because otherwise we are keeping it. Yeah, there you go. Hi there. We are kind of keeping it for ourselves, and that's what makes it into that daylily that blooms one day and dies the next.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have like some nice outcome, but it'll go like that.
I think too, it's easy to, in a sense, I hate to say phone it in, but when you're not concentrating the right way, so we sit down for each session like that to make it fresh and clear, do the forethoughts and so forth, bring it like that. So we're not just doing it, going through the motions, but also concentrating on that and setting out the merit and in a way making it interesting for ourselves too.
Well, yeah, exactly. It enriches it for ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. No, that's great. I tell you what, these classes, I always bring stuff home from it. I really, really appreciate it. Well, then I guess we'll close for today. I don't know if I'm back next week or if somebody else is back next week. I forget, but you're going to see a little bit more of me between now and the end because all the Lamas are busy. You know, they're busy people, so you'll see a little bit more of me here. I think I've got 4 more to teach, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, they said I loved it. One of the Lamas said to me, "You've taught this a lot." And I said, "Yeah, but I still need to study." So, all right. Well, let's gather together. All the merit. I mean, hey, it's Sagadawa. Right? We've been talking Dharma on Sagadawa, man. It's great. And don't forget to check your Dharma calendars, because the observation of one of the other of the 4 great holidays is in July. In July is the Buddha's first teaching. I think it's Monday. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's the last Monday, I believe. So there you go. Okay, Yunten, can you give us some prayers of dedication, please? Okay, all right. Very good. I think we also have a live mic somewhere, so we might have to take a peek. Thank you. All right. All right. We'll start here, and we'll think that we dedicate all this merit to all suffering beings. There are so many right now. May all of these beings, those who are the victims of harm and those who are causing harm, may all of them be free from suffering and free from samsara and become Buddhas, and then benefit all beings in positive ways. So we'll start with this long life prayer for Karmapa. O Jiao Kunning Je Ranzu Karmapa, Giao Kun Trin Lei Chi Du Karmapa, Giao Kun Dun Sop Wan Kur Karmapa, Or Gendro Du Trin Lei Shap Ten So, Sunam Di Tam Che Zipani, Tomne ne pedra nam pam jene, ke gana chi palap trupai, si pe sole dro an yudo shok, jampal pa wuji tar ken padang, Kuntu zampo de ante gente, de da kun ki jesu da lo ching, ke wadi ta tam che rap tu ngo, sanje kusum ne pe jin la tang, 주님인 줄된 페이진 라당 겐든 미체든 페이진 랍키 지탕어와 문람드파쇼 두지레 자자회 춘레파 Karma ten ten pe nim podi, chotar kun chap chap chi jun mi che, tapara pel pel wetara shi sho. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Yunten, host with the most.